Hello and welcome. Excuse me. Every day here on this channel there is some short chanting, reflections on the qualities of the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, and some other reflections, a short meditation of only 15 minutes, but time to just sit and center ourselves, beginning the day, followed by some blessings. Now this I share with you each and every day at 6 a.m. Sri Lanka time, which is the time of sunrise here. It is my little morning puja, which is why I don't include that in this section where I talk to you about your questions and your comments, just to allow a little bit more time, which is to some extent restricted because I have to use internet and I have to upload these videos to YouTube so that you can see them. Just to mention that, if you want to watch those, not necessarily live, I think you can just pick them, go to the channel, they're listed under live or whatever, they'll come up somehow there in the front. Oh, looking at the first comment I have here. I want to know from you how to deal with grief of loved one. Okay, so again there is a whole talk about grief, dealing with grief on this channel. For certain subjects which are often asked, frequently asked questions if you like, you can look at the playlist of basic, I think it might be called Basic Buddhism, I can't remember now. But just type in English Buddhist Monk in your search bar on YouTube, followed by the word, like grief in this case, and other talks will come up, Buddhist related in English, but also mine on this very subject. So if you look up English Buddhist Monk grief, there is a whole long talk about that, maybe two in fact. However, all of these discussions, these talks, Dharma talks, and when reflecting on your comments and looking at your questions, talking about those, we are referring to not specifically grief, but the teachings of the Buddha, which are suffering and the end of suffering. So we are determining the cause of suffering and following the path to lead us to the end of suffering in this lifetime. It is all about suffering, not in a negative sense, but recognizing what suffering is, why it is there, reflecting upon that, and therefore freeing ourselves from suffering. All of these talks, all of the questions I answer are related to that same subject. So whether we title this suffering as grief, which is quite a severe, acute form of suffering, or just dealing with some sensual desires for a little bit too much entertainment, or a little bit too much to eat, or too much to drink, or even too much sleep, or dealing with aversion, things we don't like, perhaps the noisy neighbours, or a job, a boss that we're not getting along with. It's all suffering. The cause for all suffering is desire. The desire to have what you do not have, or the desire not to have what you have. A feeling, an emotion. In the sense of grief, it is very much a deep and debilitating feeling and emotion. It is more the desire, however, not to have that debilitating feeling and emotion that is the problem, than the knowledge of that being desire, not to have that emotion, when recognized, can free you of a large part of the suffering when you see the emotion as simply just that. The body's, the mind's response to being parted from something you hold dearly. In part of our chanting, our reflections, daily, we reflect on that very subject, chanting that we will be parted from those whom we love as they will be parted from us. All we hold dear will be taken from us as we will be taken from them. And this is a very important reflection, and also confirmation of these characteristics of existence that we come to understand through this practice of Buddhism, following the Noble Eightfold Path of Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Panya being wisdom, establishing the first step on the Noble Eightfold Path of right view, which is appreciating the qualities, the characteristics of our very existence, in that everything is impermanent, everything is unsatisfactory, and all is out of our control. Anicca, impermanence; dukkha, suffering; anatta, not self. So please, if you're suffering from grief, look up that video. It's quite long. I talk about grief, but please also continue watching all of these other videos. They apply to that very subject also. Okay. Do you really believe all this effort to alleviate thinking is the way nature designed us to live life? When I look at a guy like Albert Einstein, it seems pretty clear to me he was doing exactly what he was meant to do. I don't get the point of suppressing thought. I mean, if you're bothered by thought processing, that doesn't reflect your natural inclination. I can understand the impulse to distract oneself, but otherwise it's clearly what we're designed to do. This is how life on earth evolves. So this practice is not about suppressing thinking. It is about understanding, coming to realize and understand the truth and the basis on what that thinking is. And the likes of intellectual beings such as Albert Einstein and many others, as well as people whom are talented in other areas, for instance the arts, are such that they have very powerful thinking brains to assist us all with their development of ideas. But that doesn't mean that they also had time to rest, have a break, allow their minds to just settle, not to suppress their thinking, but just to have time out. We all have to go to work to earn a living, but we're not expected to continually do that for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We get a break. This practice is about that, giving our minds the opportunity to have a break, a rest, and therefore it's restorative. They then have the energy to continue with their work later on. So we can compartmentalize our thinking process, that of our thinking brain, and utilize it to its maximum extent without any problems or conflict with the teachings of what the Buddha, whom after all was a very intellectual being, to have realized this understanding. And also with study of, maybe if you're interested in the Dharma, in linguistics, in any areas either related to Buddhism or unrelated to Buddhism, this is not a problem. Likewise, we can engage in, as lay people, entertainment, in enjoying things, going out to restaurants, socializing, as well as maybe enjoying our work life, our businesses, and all of the usual aspects of household life. But we can still also allow ourselves time to just sit and switch off, not from everything and pushing everything away, but allow ourselves to stop reacting for a moment or two. Just to spend some time, allowing ourselves time to just see things, thoughts as they arrive, and if they warrant further contemplation, feel free to do so. There is no suppression, no pushing against nature. Buddhism is very much about understanding nature and just gently maybe redirecting natural instincts if they push us towards more suffering rather than pushing us towards freedom from suffering. So if we have the overwhelming desire to drink lots of alcoholic beverages or to eat lots and lots of unhealthy food because we like the buzz or we like the feeling and the taste at the time, we know intellectually that ultimately that isn't the healthy option. And this knowing, this understanding may redirect us to perhaps not drinking an abundance of alcoholic beverages, maybe just cutting right down on that or not at all, drinking something more healthily, eating perhaps more healthily food. It doesn't mean you have to suppress the desire entirely. Again, it's not about suppression, it's understanding and redirecting gently our focus towards what doesn't cause us further suffering. When we identify truly for ourselves, not because somebody asks us to, teaches us to, or tells us to, even the Buddha within his teachings, asks us not to take his word, but to experience for ourselves the benefits of this practice. So when we, through that experience ourselves, can appreciate that desire when fueled by trying to gratify insatiable desires, just leads to wanting more and more and more for less and less benefit, that cycle of addiction, we can more clearly see the process of how we are being directed by our thoughts in an unwholesome, unskillful way, and bring our thinking process back to directing our thoughts in a more skillful and wholesome way. So maybe it wasn't clear from the clip or the video you saw, but that is what we're referring to when we're trying to reduce thoughts in the thinking brain, the thinking process that we call papancha, rumination. This overthinking about a subject. The actual truth that there is suffering and there's a cause of suffering is just that, the truth. So fairly plain for us all to see. We cannot deny the truth that there is suffering. This is how we know it's the truth. There is no denying it. And there has to be a cause for that. And this is the identification of that cause that directs our minds away from that cause. Okay, right. I have daily tension headache for many years, very difficult when I sit down to meditate. The soreness around the head, always there. What can I do? Stop trying. When you sit down to meditate, don't think you're having to sit down to meditate. You're just going to take this opportunity to stop. Whatever you were doing, stop. Now, yes, sit in a relatively conducive place to calm, peace and quiet. And just maybe when you have had time to relax, bring your awareness to the breath and that alone. When you're ready, gently close your eyes. Don't be focusing. I can almost see your face from reading the question, that you're sitting there with your eyes pointing to the center of your forehead, trying to see that third eye, this kind of meditation that we do not do in Buddhist meditation, in bhavana, in development of the mind. We simply sit and allow our minds to settle, then they can develop samadhi. Concentration, yes, but directed focus on just one thing. So think of it as, rather than trying hard to focus on one thing, think of it of stop looking at all of the other things. Stop focusing on everything else. That's what's causing the headache. You're seeing all that's going on around your meditation object because you're trying to focus in on your meditation object. If you just gently allow the other things, the thoughts or the sounds, sights, anything that's going on that's stimulating your attention to just settle, they will drop away naturally of their own accord. Now is your time, the time to relax. And if you can, just breathe in, noticing the temperature of the breath, and then slowly and naturally in your ordinary pace, breathe out, saying to yourself, relax my face. Firstly, noticing the tension around your eyes, letting that relaxation drop away. Then very gradually, but automatically, without you thinking about it, around your ears, neck, and then shoulders will also relax. That tension will go, which is what the tension that is causing the tension headache. All day you've been squinting like this. I mean, please, if you haven't, go to the opticians, check your eyes. This can be the cause of this symptom more often than not. It's nothing to do with anything other than you're trying to see. And anything to do with squinting your eyes, trying to see, causes a headache. Many people who have headaches cure their headaches by simply buying some reading glasses or getting some glasses to see in the distance. But the same with meditation. People who don't have headaches get headaches from meditation because they're doing the same physical thing. They're squinting their eyes, either to keep them closed tightly, shut, or because they're trying to point their eyes inwards, focus them upwards, let your eyes go wherever they want. And then just gently let your eyelids shut. Your eyes will just naturally be looking around somewhere there, about 1.5 meters in front of you at the floor. Make sure your posture's right. Watch the video I've got on here where I talk about how to sit. Just type that, English Buddhist Monk, how to sit, so that your posture is right. And then your headache will go away. Now, if it doesn't, then you need to go to the doctor or the optician. One of the two will get to the root of the problem. But more often than not, the root of the problem is physical, and it's squinting the eyes. So, breathing in, watching the breath as you're breathing in, and breathing out, watching the breath as you're breathing out, and saying to yourself, relax my face. And reminding yourself through the meditation, relax your face. And as you do so, your eyes, bring special attention to around your eyes, allowing those to just become tension-free. What do you chant? Coming from US. So I guess you're coming from the US. I'm chanting just reflections. It's not prayer, it's not worship. They're reflections on the Buddha's teachings, or the qualities of the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. I do actually in the morning chant some of the Sinhalese, more devotional, in Pali, but what they chant in Sri Lanka, they're devotional practices. So with regards to offering flowers, incense, candles, and bowing to the Buddha Rupa, the Bodhi trees, and this kind of thing, because it is customary to do so here. But they too are also only reflections on the qualities of doing those activities. They're by no means prayer or worship. And all of these, maybe with the exception of those devotional things that they have in Sri Lanka, are in the chanting book that I use, which is the Wat Marp Jan chanting book. If you Google Wat Marp Jan chanting book, you'll find the link to get that in English or Thai. And it's in English translated from the Pali, so it's both there. All of the chanting, all of the reflections, and the key suttas and paritas, so these reflections we call protective chants, which are not prayers for protection, they're recognition of what we need to do ourselves to protect ourselves and others. So it's always a very important thing to remember. Our chanting, all of this and bowing isn't about asking someone else to help us. It's about reminding ourselves how we can help ourselves, and by that help many others in turn. We're not relying on a higher power here. Don't buy, he is alone, and there is ads on a Buddhist channel. It's fake guru. Ah, okay. So don't buy. No, don't. There's nothing to buy. I'm not selling anything at all or trying to convert anybody, and have no intention or wish to do so. It's entirely up to you whether you listen to this or not. And generally speaking, people that are listening to it are trying to perhaps get an understanding of what our teacher, the Guru, the Buddha, an enlightened ordinary mortal being, but not ordinary because he became enlightened, to enable him to discover these teachings, which have continued to this day, 2,568 years later, unchanged and still very relevant, even in modern times, to the time that they were first taught. In the 45 years time, 45 years, the Buddha travelled northeast India teaching these Four Noble Truths and Noble Eightfold Path. So he's the Guru, he's the teacher. I'm not a teacher. I am just sharing my experience of practicing what our teacher, the Buddha, taught us. The ads are nothing to do with me, they're up to you. Whatever you are Googling, YouTube is watching you and giving you ads before you start watching the videos on this channel and perhaps afterwards. But there are no adverts during my talks. Everything's turned off as far as advertising is concerned. This is why we need a certain amount of control over these channels to be able to turn all of that interruption off. So that has been done, but I have no control outside of that, or neither do I have any control as to what people are searching on other occasions. So sometimes people say, why am I getting adverts of fried chicken and dancing ladies and beer just before your videos come up? Well, it's because you've been searching for fried chicken, dancing ladies and beer on previous occasions, or maybe you've even spoken about it or thought about it, because it does seem quite strange that these smart, as they're very smart devices, seem to be able to come up with suggestions about just things you may have even thought of and not even got round to searching for yet. A lot of it, I think, is largely coincidence, but nevertheless, the adverts are turned off. And if I'm fake, that's fine. I mean, fake what? Yeah, I don't. I'm only talking about the Four Noble Truths and my understanding of them, and not really asking anyone to believe anything. In fact, I'm suggesting people should not believe in anything and practice for themselves. So yes, you're quite right. Don't buy. Oh, and I am alone. Yes, practicing in solitude. And that is positively encouraged by the Buddha, our teacher, to, when you've had the training, to go out alone, living in solitude under a tree, in a cave, in an empty building, or indeed yes, you can live in a monastery with a community. But if you read all of the biographies of the Arahants that have been around in what we'd call modern times, but really for the last 100, 200 years, you'll find that most of their practice was alone in solitude in remote areas and in the forest, not in large monasteries with big communities around them, performing all kinds of rites and rituals. There are not very many Arahants from that background. So what you consider wrong with being alone, I'm not really sure. I think there is a lot attributed here in this country to you have to live in a temple. It does seem to be the case. If you're a monk, they ask you which temple. do you live in? Which country are you from? Which temple do you live in? Well, I have a temple. My temple is the Mahabodhi Society of Bangalore, in Bangalore, southern India. Very big, beautiful Buddhist temple with many people visiting every day. We train there many, many monks to a very, very high standard of Vinaya and practice, but also educationally. It's a renowned, in India and worldwide, a renowned institute of education. I think it's almost qualified now to a university standard. I can't be sure. I'm not familiar with that side of things. But it is very well respected and renowned, and that is my temple, that is my monastery, that is my Sangha, to whom I am responsible, and they look after me. Also, they support me and I in return support them. Albeit I'm working remotely from them, living in not that far away, but in a different country, but still with their training and support behind me. So in that sense, I'm not alone, but physically, yes, I'm practicing solitude. So I thought I would reply to that comment, although I would say, by the very nature of it, it didn't deserve a reply. But I don't want to get drawn into debate and argument, just giving out of compassion the subscriber, or let's say the person who left the comment, perhaps just the benefit of explaining where they may have misunderstood, just perhaps from seeing a clip or something, rather than watching a whole talk or all of the talks. They may have just misunderstood slightly what this channel was about. Because it is not to say that there aren't, generally speaking, what you describe in all kinds of faiths and fields, different areas of life, on media, on YouTube, but just restricting it because it's the only thing I know really, but yes, on YouTube also. There are all kinds of scams and things going on, I'm sure, and fake stuff. But, you know, there has to be a reason, doesn't there, to be fake. We're not allowed to lie as Buddhists in our precepts, and anything fake would imply that there's a lie behind it. But generally people will be lying for a reason, either for some kind of gain, or not to be found out about something they've done to have given them some gain in the first place. And to that end, when you look at a simple monk, what have they to gain? There's no donations necessary. There is, as I said, no advertising, although you're attributing what happens before and after you watch this video. That's out of my control. So yeah, I'd be going to a lot of effort faking. Well, I don't really understand the reasoning or the meaning behind that. You please explain if you want to expand upon it, your comment. I will read it for sure. Okay. When meditating, do we have to see certain shapes? I just seem to see blobs of orange colour. Then everything goes bright white after a while. Also, at one time, my arms seemed to levitate. Okay, so this is just seeing. Even with our eyes closed, you can see light, both from external light coming in through the eyelids, even if it's quite dark, but internally generated from our mind is the phenomena of light, of seeing. We can also call this nimittas, which are signs. The Pali word nimitta is translated, the literal translation is signs, but it usually refers to lights or stars or flashing lights, but the phenomena of seeing something whilst you have your eyes closed, whilst you're meditating. But one should, even if it's very entertaining, attractive, beautiful, pretty, then one should not get attached to this, which is just phenomena. Likewise with your arms feeling like they're levitating, often just as you relax, your body will feel a whole lot lighter. It will feel that your whole body is levitating if you're able to relax sufficiently to have that feeling, that impression, that idea that this is happening. But the minute you wake up, look and say, hey, am I levitating? That's it, it's gone, isn't it? Because it's just phenomena that's occurring to really distract you from what you're trying to do. Or not trying to do, distract you from what you're just allowing to happen, and that is just to let your mind become only aware of one thing, which is your meditation object, to the exclusion of this seeing of orange blobs, of white light, of levitating arms, to the exclusion of all that as just phenomena, conditioned things that are happening as a result of the causes and conditions you've put in place. That is sitting in meditation, so good, wholesome causes and conditions to give you a nice, pleasant feeling. Even piti and sukha, rapture and joy that arises through meditation. Calmness, tranquility, peace that arises from meditation are still only phenomena. They are not the end goal. The end goal is emptiness, a mind that can simply know and experience the emptiness of a mind that has no distraction or anything to contemplate, think about, speculate on, just simply be as it is in the present moment, here and now, timeless and free from suffering, even for a glimpse of a moment, is sufficient experience of freedom from suffering to be unable to unexperience, unsee that and unknow that. Once you know freedom from suffering, even for a glimpse, nibbana, even for a glimpse, we cannot unsee it, unknow it. It is there, and therefore more readily available for us to return to. But likewise, this cannot be done by force, just simply a process of time spent gradually practicing this, sitting in meditation, allowing it just to happen, and it will do eventually. Do you Buddhist monks eat meat? If not, then why can normal Buddhist people eat meat? Yes, so we've talked about that many times, although I don't think I've ever made a specific video about it because it comes up so often. But there's no requirement to be vegetarian in Buddhism, whether you're a monk or a lay person, it's the same. We cannot kill, we do not kill, and therefore this would extend to asking someone to kill an animal for us to eat. But if there's some chicken in the shop already there and not prepared for us especially, then we can buy that, eat that. That's not breaking the precepts and it's okay. But if you're vegetarian, that is also okay. So I am vegetarian, many monks, many Buddhists are vegetarian, but it isn't a rule. It is a matter of choice. So some people like tea, some people like coffee. There's no rule about it, it's your choice. Some people are vegetarian, some people eat meat. There's no rule about it, it's your choice. We just cannot kill. So lay people or monks, you can eat what you like. It's a little bit more difficult and complicated with monks because we're not also allowed to refuse the food that we're offered. So if people offer us food, then we will accept it graciously. But we can, within the confines of our bowl that the food is offered in, set aside the meat, maybe give it to someone else if we don't want to eat it later on. But all food we receive, we would graciously and with gratitude appreciate and accept. Ooh. I had commented earlier, I wasn't sure what I was asking you for. You said you do longer meditations, so if it is possible, would you like to upload longer meditation videos, like more than an hour? Oh yes, well I think we had this comment yesterday about guided meditation videos. It's not practical in this environment for me to upload, as well as these talks, upload guided meditation videos for longer than an hour, because I don't have the well, it's a waste of internet in my opinion. I wouldn't be speaking, I'd be sitting there just put this 15-minute video on in the morning that I spoke of earlier, and then when it starts, press pause, and then you start your meditation and set a timer on your watch or your alarm clock to when you have to finish your meditation. Yeah, I mean, guided meditations for longer than an hour. Personally, I've never got on with such things. You know, if you're meditating for an hour and the requirement is that you have someone talking to you during that hour, this isn't the kind of meditation I do. I'm actually trying to bring my focus of attention, my awareness to the breath, to the exclusion of hearing, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking about things, those 6 senses. So if I'm having to listen or watch even a YouTube video with someone telling me how to meditate for an hour, then I'm watching a YouTube video of someone telling me how to meditate for over an hour. Well, I've just explained in the last question, or the one before that, how to meditate in about 30 seconds. That's how you meditate. You sit, you allow your body to relax, and eventually it will allow your body to settle, and eventually it will relax. Allow your mind to settle, it will eventually become calm. Just keeping your attention on your breath and relaxing your face helps the rest of your body also relax. That's enough said. If you need reminding of that continuously through the video, there are some guided meditations already on YouTube by people doing that, but very often, for want of something to say, they go into a whole field of other directions, talking about metta, loving kindness, this practice as part of the meditation, and then maybe another aspect of scanning the body, and then maybe another aspect. Really make your choice before you sit and do just that. Sit and watch the breath, or think about loving kindness, or think about the internal workings of the body. These are more contemplative, but actually wanting to develop deep, absorbed states of samadhi, you turn off YouTube, turn off everything, and just sit and watch what happens in this body and in this mind. So, but it's also kind of impractical. If it was free internet and I had phones that didn't need charging up, and or if someone else was doing it, not me, then they can come and sit and just film me meditating for 3 hours if they want to. But it would be probably the most boring video on YouTube ever published, because who wants to just sit and watch someone who doesn't move for 3 hours? Maybe you do, in which case come along with your camera and you can do that. But that's not going to help with your own practice, which is what you should be doing, concentrating on your own practice, not other people's. Is there a chanting book available for those of us who wish to follow along? Yes, so I've just said that, and I do send you the link when you ask that question. What Marp Jan chanting book? Just Google that. Oh, another one about chanting. Why the chanting? Is it an attempt to replace karma, generated thinking, with neutral, non-reactive thought patterns, self-hypnosis? Well, nothing so complicated as that. They are reflections on the teachings of the Buddha. They are also summaries of the suttas, which are the teachings of the Buddha. They're reflections on, actually I should have said reflections on the qualities of the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and reminders of our practice, albeit in the Pali language, which is a rather useful way of getting to know the key Pali words and expressions, because they are more directly attributed to what the Buddha was talking about. So when he said dukkha, suffering, he meant dukkha. He didn't mean all of the other translations in all of the international versions translating dukkha into suffering or unsatisfactoriness or discontentness. You know, it's just one word. It means off-center, so just slightly not quite right, wanting something, not even be able to put your finger on what it is. But it's a very, without using lots of words, it's hard to describe, but we can just say dukkha, anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, suffering, not self. But when we just stick to the Pali, it's simple. We don't need to explain it with sentences when you get to really feel and understand it. So that's why the chanting. It helps with all of that, with the Buddha's teachings. It's also a good way of practicing mindfulness, keeping our attention on the subject in hand. It's also a good way of allowing our bodies and minds to relax, because we're using the breath, the breathing, in a managed fashion, not controlled, but we're having to be aware of our breathing a little more because we're chanting. We don't want to run out of breath mid-verse. It's also when you're chanting with others, you're having to be mindful of listening to them and chanting harmoniously alongside. So it has many useful attributes, and I don't do a great deal of it. I just do a little bit in the morning, but I find that that's useful and enough for my purposes. But some people would choose to chant a lot more, some not at all. It's a matter of choice. But it's nothing so complicated as an attempt to replace or change your karma. Although it is a wholesome activity because you're reflecting on the teachings of the Buddha, it is in effect positive karma, an action of positive karmic nature. Therefore, the more positive actions you have in your life, the more diluted the negative actions, the negative karmic vipaka is the results of karma, we say in the Pali, has an effect. It's a process of dilution. So you could argue that all of your comments there are, yes, correct. Self-hypnosis, I would say not so, because it may help you after, when you meditate, reach absorbed states of samadhi more quickly, because you've already gone to some extent towards clearing the mind of its mental activity by performing something else in its place, which is the chanting. So if your mind was actively busy from a day at work, or day at education, or day even just playing and entertaining yourself, then by chanting for 10-15 minutes or an hour or 3 hours, whatever is of interest, then you are replacing all of that mental activity with just chanting. So when you come to sit to meditate, the mind is to some degree already settled, and therefore you can absorb into meditation more easily. But that is not a form of hypnosis. We're not hypnotizing ourselves in meditation. That is more a form of going to sleep in a way, whereas we're trying to become awake. Buddha means the awakened one. We want to awaken like the Buddha. So we want to see more clearly, become more alert, and have a heightened sense of heightened sensuality, not to enjoy sensual experience more so, but to see it more clearly for what it is and the truth of it, and appreciate its impermanence, its unsatisfactoriness and uncontrollability. Someone's asking me about the lotus position. We'll probably finish on this question as it's quite a short one. Can you put their right foot on their left thigh first? Oh yes, so in the full lotus, yes, so it really doesn't matter. You can sit in a chair, you can stand up. The Buddha taught meditation sitting, standing, walking, or lying down. The customary usual position to sit in meditation would be in the lotus position, yes, but usually the half lotus, not full lotus. Most people, the full lotus is not easily done or that comfortable. But when you're used to it, I'm quite used to it, so I find it more comfortable to meditate that way. It's more supportive to sitting for a long time. And I tend to always want to have the right foot on the left thigh. It is actually how the Buddha specifies we sit, and then, but he doesn't specify how that position is in relation to the full lotus, which comes from yogic practices. So that in order to have your right foot on top of your left thigh, one would have to put your left foot on your... No, so right foot on left thigh, one has to get the left foot on the right thigh first. to get that foot up there. But it's neither here nor there. For meditation purposes, just don't move. Find a posture where you can sit. Nothing gets cut off bloodstream wise, so nothing goes numb or gives you pins and needles. I know you hear a lot of people saying, oh well, you just sit through the numbness and the pins and needles. Just don't get them in the first place. If you're sitting correctly in the right posture, you won't get numbness or pins and needles, only if you cut off the blood supply. And the reason the Buddha describes this way of sitting is because it enables you not to cut anything off. Sit as he sat on a grass mat, but stiff kusha grass, I've forgotten the name of it, but anyway, I sit on a piece of cloth on a hard floor. As soon as you start sitting on cushions and all kinds of mats and devices and things like this, then the folds of the material push up and cut off the blood supply. That's why people get pins and needles and numbness. You don't get it if you just sit. I'm not young, I don't know whether I'm nearly 57 or 58, I'm something like that. And I didn't start meditation or even in fact ever sit on the floor. Apart from maybe I did a bit of martial arts, which did require a bit of floor work, but other than that, mostly I was in a comfortable chair or on a sofa until I was in my 40s. So you don't have to be young and fit, just learn and discipline yourselves to be able to sit without aid. So with meditation, we don't want to have to rely on a phone giving us a guided meditation. We don't want to have to be relying on a zafu or a special piece of or cushion with Himalayan buckwheat beads inside it or anything like this. We don't want to have to be relying on a set of mala beads. We don't want to have to be relying on anything at all. You should be able to just sit and meditate anywhere and experience the same. Appreciably, at first we need conducive environments to learn and practice the skill. But once we have, to some degree, the ability to ride the bicycle, we can take the stabilizers off and we can ride the bicycle anywhere. Train sometimes sounds like it's very close, and it's in fact quite a long way away. It's something to do with the direction of the wind, I think, because sometimes you can't hear it at all. But we need to be able to meditate without aid. This is the point of meditation. It's getting away from using stuff, needing other things. It's unconditioned. The Buddha taught us that all conditioned things are unsatisfactory. The Buddha taught us that all conditioned things are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and out of our control. Like ourselves, we are anicca, impermanent. We are suffering, dukkha. We are anatta. We are not selves, just the results of causes and conditions we put in place. Now this applies to our meditation. If it is required that we have to be in a special place to meditate, sit on a certain kind of cushion, or have a certain kind of sound going on by way of a guided meditation. This is all doesn't make any sense at all. We're trying to get away from that, away from conditioned things, take away all the conditions and just put some loose clothing on, in your pajamas, tie your hair up if you've got some, and just sit on the floor. And it might be uncomfortable for some time, but eventually you'll get used to it, and then you'll be able to meditate anywhere, anytime, any place, like Martini used to say in the advertisement, anytime, any place, anywhere. This is our aim for meditation, to be able to do it anytime, any place, anywhere, even whilst we're doing other things. Then we are practicing mindfulness, we're bringing in sati samadhi, samasati, samasamadhi, right mindfulness and right meditation from the Noble Eightfold Path into our everyday activities throughout our lives, whilst interacting with other beings, all other beings. They will sense, they will know that you have this about you. They will feel that you have this undeterminable quality of focus and calm that they will also want to have. It rubs off, you see. It is why you're watching this video, because you've heard of meditation, you've heard of monastic life, and you want to experience some of it for yourself. Well, you can just throw away all of the assistance, the aids, and sit on the floor and do nothing except watch the breath for as long as you possibly can. And you will find eventually this will be the most joy and rapture you can get in this world, in this lifetime, in this existence. And this pleasure is unconditioned. You've thrown away all conditions, even if you're of ill health and experiencing pain. If you develop, whilst you're free from that, the skills to attain to deep absorbed levels of samadhi, then when pain, sickness, and even ultimately at the end death comes along, you will be free from the suffering attached to those ailments, because you will have deep samadhi free from those conditions. So don't build your world with straw. I don't know the expression. Don't build your world with all of these conditioned things supporting it, because you will not always have those. Build your world in the unconditioned, nurturing qualities of metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, mudita, joy for others, and establishing and developing the quality of equanimity, upekkha, within your own existence in this lifetime, becoming free from suffering. This is attaining to nibbana through the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path. And on that note, I shall leave you to hopefully use some of this, or if not, just let it go and maybe come along next time and try watching again. And one day you'll find something useful. Be happy and stay well, Sukhi Hotu.